Joining us here on the show is our good friend Yogi Roth from the Pac12 Network. What's going on, Yogi? Good morning.
Thanks, man. I'm out here at UCLA football practice and admiring all of the videos you guys kick out on your Twitter handle, man. Hilarious usage of Curb Your Enthusiasm, by the way, man. Big fan.
Well, we appreciate you noticing that. And Curb Your Enthusiasm is a pretty good subtext for the Cleveland Browns season. For the Pac-12 season, you know, the Washington Huskies now are the team that's the one-loss team. What has to happen in your mind for the Huskies to make the college football playoff?
Well, I mean, clearly they have to win out and get a little bit of help. But, you know, it's going to happen naturally, right? I mean, they're going to slide up if they win at least 2 spots after this weekend just because of the teams that play each other that are ahead of them, right, in the Big 12 and then Notre Dame and Miami. And then I honestly think that the craziness just kind of ensues. You know, we don't really know a lot about how good Alabama is. We don't really know how good Georgia is. We know how good elements of their teams are, but, you know, we just don't know. So I honestly think, and this will sound crazy, but if they were undefeated, they would be ranked probably where they are, like at least 7, 8, 9. Like maybe Miami, Wisconsin, UW, you play around with them. So I think they're in fine position. I think all the, you know, big statements that, you know, you hear around the country from last week, and it got a little less this week, but the Pac-12's out. How does anybody say that at this point of the game? I just think it's kind of ridiculous when we know that craziness always ensues up until championship weekend in college football. And what I think will happen over the next couple of weeks is people start to recognize their defense. You know, we talk about, you know, Oklahoma's offense all the time. Well, they gave up 10 explosive plays to Oklahoma State. UW's given up 14 all season. I mean, their defense is, you know, one of the tops in the country, if not, at least to me, their defensive front in the top 2 or 3, you know, in the same conversation as Georgia, same conversation as Bama. They have all NFL guys down the middle of their defense. So I think they're legit there, and I think pending on if teams continue to win, like Wazoo wins this weekend, they play them in the Apple Cup that has big ramifications, the country will watch. The voters will obviously have the opportunity to take notice, and same thing when they play the Trojans, which is probably in all likelihood going to happen in the Pac-12 title if they both take care of business.
Well, you just threw a big, juicy steak out there for the SEC Lions. You said we still don't know about Alabama, and we still don't know about Georgia. Okay, Alabama, a lot of that is based on reputation and coaching. But Georgia has beaten the number 3 team in the country on the road, and Mississippi State, they throttled, who's a top 16 team in the college football playoff rankings. How can you say we don't know about Georgia?
Well, a couple reasons. One is we don't know about the whole SEC conference. You know, like I think reputation, I get it. You know, at the top they've been, you know, the kingpin in college football for the majority of the last decade. But the middle of the conference, we don't know how good Mississippi State is. We don't. I mean, I just think that you could talk about those things in a reality standpoint and say, you know, we're not really sure. You know, I look at Jake Fromm, who I love. He's an Elite 11 quarterback, came up through high school. We knew he was going to be special, but he's still a true freshman. I'm excited to see him this weekend. I'm excited to see him the last couple of weeks when it gets hard. I just don't think that it's a lead pipe cinch like it was last year, for instance. You knew Clemson and you knew Alabama were the 2 best teams in the country. You know, and I think, you know, everybody from experts or novices would be able to say, yeah, I get that. This year, I just think it's too hard. You know, I get the win over Mississippi State and clearly impressive, but I look at the SEC as a whole, and I don't say to myself, wow, this is a dominant conference in so many different areas. And I don't know if you could say that about a lot of conferences right now. I think each of them have their strengths in different areas, right? It's the Big 12 and what they do on offense. Obviously, that's a strength. It's the Big 10, and I'm not really sure. You know, it's obviously they play pretty sound football in that conference, but you couldn't say that there's a dominant team based on what we've seen over the last couple of weeks, right? Ohio State, Penn State, Wisconsin. We'll kind of see what happens there. So I don't think that the parity in college football is I think the parity in college football is there. I think it's there in every conference this year more than it has been in the last probably 5 years of major college football, including the SEC.
Yogi Roth joins us from the Pac-12 Networks. So does that mean you're kind of not buying on Notre Dame? Because Georgia did go to Notre Dame and win. You're not quite buying on the Irish being that good?
No, I think the Irish are probably the most physical offense in the country. You know, you look at their offensive line, obviously the left side of it, you know, guys are going to play for a while on Sunday. Brandon Winbush, another guy who came through the Elite 11 process, you know, being challenged to pass. He had to do it last week and clearly proved that he can. I think he's a gifted player. You know, I remember talking to some of the quarterbacks who were at Notre Dame in the past, and they said, hey, man, we had to leave. We knew how good Brandon was going to be, you know, and talking to Deshaun Kaiser, It was tongue-in-cheek, but he knew how talented Brandon Wimbush was going to be when he got his opportunity. And to me, they are one of the top teams in the country. I completely agree with that. And the win, look, by Georgia was impressive. I'm not taking anything away from that. But I think so often in college football we make arguments one way or the other based on one game. And that's fair to a certain degree, but I think when you look at the whole body work all season long, I don't think there's been a team in college football that's just been ridiculously dominant. You know, to me, if I had to look at my top teams right now, if all things are equal and you're healthy, I look at Clemson. They've been one of the most impressive teams in the country this year. And I get the Syracuse loss, and that still matters. It's why they're ranked where they are. But they've been one of the more complete teams I've seen around the country, as has Georgia to a degree, but you're still dealing with the first-time quarterback. And we saw it here in Southern California when Josh Rosen was a true freshman. We saw it when a lot of guys come in as true freshmen. With Jacob Eason last year. Their firsts are their firsts, and I just believe in that. So often you can't replicate the scenarios, the attention, the pressure, the type of spot throws you have to make in November when it's late in the ball game. And I just don't think that I could sit here, and I think it'd be hard for anybody, even if you're curious what Gary Danielson even said when you had him on earlier, but to say, okay, this team, whether it's Georgia, Notre Dame, Alabama, they're just a lock. We know how well they're going to play here on out. I think this year more than any, it's as hard to give that answer of who are the top teams in the country and who we expect to play the most consistent over the last few weeks of the season.
A couple of weeks ago we had you on, and everybody was kind of furrowing their brow and clasping their hands and saying, oh, my God, Sam Darnold is throwing so many interceptions. This is bad. And you said, hey, I'm not too concerned about that. Well, he has continued to throw picks. Are you still not all that concerned about Sam Darnold's season?
Yeah, I think when you look at the numbers, clearly they haven't been as impressive as they were a year ago. But again, I go to his picks and I look at all of them, and there's two, really bad ones. It was the first one and the one 2 weeks ago against ASU. But other than that, you if you're coaching him, you'd say, yeah, make that throw. And sometimes the ball hasn't been in the perfect spot. Sometimes it's been a drop. A lot of things have happened, but he's completed those throws. And I still will stick by the line when I talk about Sam is that I think he completes more throws than the majority of quarterbacks even attempt. So I look at his season, and the fumbles to me are more alarming than the picks, because some of those are just kind of freaking. They've happened a little too consistently, probably for his liking, let alone a Trojan fan or somebody looking in the National Football League. But Sam's still making, wow-type throws. He's making subtle movements in the pocket. Say, whoa, we don't even see that from a lot of guys on Sunday. Sorry about that. We have a little noise there on campus. But to me, he hasn't had the elite season that people expected. But, again, you go back and look at college football over the last, call it 12 years. You can go back to Leinart, to Andrew Luck, to Barkley. All these guys, when, they have such high expectations, very rarely do they ever exceed those. Let alone match those. So I look for him, and, he's lost 3 offensive linemen on the season. They're breaking in a bunch of new receivers. His top tight end's been gone for pretty much the majority of the year. They've searched for a number 2. I think they have that in Tyler Vaughn's now at wideout. A lot of things hasn't made it easy on a quarterback, and there's been times where I think he's tried too hard. But overall, I don't look at his year, after watching every snap and downgrade and say, oh, yep, Sam he was just a flash in the pan. I mean, this guy is a special talent. He's one of the more unique quarterbacks we've seen probably over the last decade in college football with the ways he can make spot throws, anticipate throws and spacing. Go back and you watch the film of the last 2 games, ASU and Arizona, and you go back to a throw against Arizona, you say, wow, how did he even see that throw to Tyler Vaughn's for a touchdown, similar to a throw made to Deontay Burnett in the Rose Bowl a year ago against Penn State that everybody talked about. And he just has an anticipation and a knack that is just, I think, probably more unique than anybody we've seen make those types of throws or be asked to make those types of throws in the last 5-10 years in college football.
So there was the report, and Sam a little bit from having worked with him and done the podcast with him, that he might not come out and that maybe he's looking to see who's got the number 1 pick. And if it's the Cleveland Browns or someplace where he wouldn't want to go, he would stay. Do you think it's still a pretty good possibility that he comes back next year to USC?
I'm always amazed where these reports come from. I'm with Sam every week. We do the podcast season of Sam, as you referenced. And I'll be honest, I don't think he's thinking about it either way. Like, he gets what the reality is, and there's going to have to be a decision at the end of the season. But even this episode that comes out today, we interviewed Matt Leinart, and, they had a great conversation about why Matt came back, and how much he loved college. You can hear I could see when Matt was talking about how much he loved college and when he came back, to be around his teammates, how good they were, the expectations. Obviously, we were going for 3 titles at a time. That was my first year on the staff out at SC. Sam kind of lit up because he loves college and he loves the experience being on campus. And I think when you're at SC and you see guys every year, it happens, right? Guys leave early that shouldn't, and guys leave early that should, or guys just graduate and go play in the league, and they all come back and say the same thing, man. It's just not as much fun. You know, I wish I had another year. So I don't think Sam is the type of guy that's going to rush a decision. I couldn't tell you which way he's leaning either way. But honestly, from being with him every week, he knows it's the decision, but I don't feel he's gauging anything on who's going to get the pick. He's worried, literally, and I know it's a cliche, but he has to be. I really think he's as dialed in as I've seen him in terms of just getting a win this weekend, their game up at Colorado and clinching the Pac-12 South. And I don't think he really worries about the league right now, to be honest, because he knows the decision is going to be there no matter what.
Yogi Roth joins us from the Pac-12 Network. Final question for you about a minute to go. Who is the Pac-12 team we should be paying attention to in the final month of the season that might be under the radar or that you circled and said, watch this team's final couple of regular season games going into the bowl season?
Well, I'd watch Arizona. You know, to me, like the CFP poll, I agree with the majority of it, but the part that I didn't get was how SC jumped up 6 spots after, you know, a close win over Arizona, and Arizona dropped out of the poll after beating Washington State, who jumped up to 19th. I would keep an eye on them because of Khalil Tate. You know, Khalil Tate is a bona fide star in college football. You know, for Rich Rodriguez and the offenses he ran, you remember what he was doing back in our day when he was at West Virginia, Denard Robinson at Michigan. Khalil Tate is a star. And for Rich Rod, when he's at a quarterback come back for a second year as a full-time starter, every year, going back to Woody Dantzler when he was an offensive coordinator at Clemson, he's been that conference's offensive player of the year. Khalil Tate is clearly in the running for that this year, you know, pending Bryce Love in these last couple of weeks. But I'd keep an eye on Arizona because I think it's going to be important to see where they end up in the rankings because it's going to influence elements of UW. You know, you're going to play the game, who beat who and who beat who, right? So if Washington beats Washington State, we're going to want all those opponents, if you're a UW fan, that Washington State played to be ranked. So you're going to want Arizona to be undefeated the last couple weeks. So I'd keep an eye on them. And then I'd watch Oregon and Justin Herbert. He's going to probably make a return the last 2 games. He'll be a star in college football next year at the quarterback position. In my opinion, he'll be a first-round draft pick when he decides to come out, whether he leaves early or he just plays throughout his career. But he's a guy that is unique in size, strength, unique arm talent. He's got the athleticism that, you know, NFL teams are seeking right now. So I'd look at those 2 guys as under-the-radar quarterbacks that will be cover boys more than likely next year, pending who decides to come back and now, you know, in the Josh Rosen, Sam Darnold world.
So check out Yogi Roth on the Pac-12 Network. Follow him on Twitter at Yogi Roth. And check out their podcast, Season of Sam with Sam Darnold, because it's a really fascinating listen and obviously a good insight into a potential #1 draft pick in the upcoming NFL draft. Yogi, it's always great to catch up, brother. Thanks so much. Try not to be backed over by a delivery truck over there.
I will. I'll try not to get run over by SEC fans either. They love that.
Thanks, buddy.
Talk to you soon, man. All right.
Yogi Roth.